Well, back in Rwanda, it was the hardcore right-wing talk show hosts who referred to the Tutsis as cockroaches. Cockroaches. We've got to exterminate the cockroaches. That's what they said on the radio, over and over. And people went out with machetes and they exterminated the cockroaches, a.k.a. the Tutsis. They murdered about 500,000 people, 1 million people, some mind-boggling number of people that the Hutus massacred the Tutsis. In Germany in the 1930s, Adolf Hitler referred to the Jews as vermin, as in a pestilence, as in pests, as in, rats and cockroaches and things. And we all know how that one turned out. In fact, the propaganda for the Minister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, on November 2nd, 1939, and this was right around the time that the Holocaust was being planned and put into place, said publicly, "These are no longer humans, these are animals. No longer humans, they're animals." Turns out we are building and stocking internment camps for brown children. Children. Little kids. Imagine, remember your own childhood. You ever get sent to your room? Imagine being sent to jail. No contact with your parents. No contact with anybody except the guards, possibly other kids. Or in some cases, adults. Donald Trump, in his cabinet meeting last week, we've heard about how he dressed down Christian, however you say it, Nielsen, the director of Homeland Security. And she almost quit and all this kind of stuff. She was all upset. But that was because he was yelling at her and he got all red in the face, and for a half hour he was berating her and screaming obscenities at her, which is just something Trump does a lot. I mean, his management style is to humiliate people. Presumably because he was humiliated a lot as a child, but whatever. But now he's taking it a step further. He's explicitly and openly referring to these children that we're now building internment camps for, these brown children, as animals. In fact, he used that word in his cabinet meeting. He said, "These aren't people, they're animals." His exact words. And it goes beyond that. He's been traveling around the country now for a year and a half. I mean, he was doing this during his campaign. He's doing it now as president, traveling around reading a poem. And it's a very bizarre poem. It's a poem about a snake. And the snake has, quote, "pretty colored skin." Let that one sink in. And this beautiful white woman decides to save this poor frozen snake. And she leaves him home while she goes to work because she's a good working woman, a good productive member of society. And when she comes home, the snake is thawed out and she holds his pretty colored skin to her bosom. And, well, I'll let Donald Trump tell you the story.
On her way to work one morning, down the path along the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor, half-frozen snake. Interesting. His pretty colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. "Oh, well," she cried, "I'll take you in, and I'll take care of you." She wrapped him up cozy in a curvature of silk, and then laid him by the fireside with some honey and some milk. Now she hurried home from work, and that night, as soon as she arrived, she found that pretty snake she'd taken and revived. Now she clutched him to her bosom. "You're so beautiful," she cried. "But if I hadn't brought you in, by now you might have died." She stroked his pretty skin, and then she kissed and held him tight. But instead of saying thank you, that snake gave her a vicious bite. "I saved you," cried the woman, "and you've bit me. Heavens, why? You know your bite is poisonous, and now I'm going to die." "Oh, shut up, silly woman," said the reptile with a grin. "You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in."
Right. So not only are these children that Donald Trump is putting in internment camps, for-profit internment camps in some cases, not only are these children animals, Goebbels would have said vermin, the right-wing radio hosts in Rwanda would have said cockroaches, but apparently there's snakes as well. We look back on World War II. We look back on Franklin Roosevelt taking Japanese ancestry Americans. Most of them spoke no Japanese. They'd been here multiple generations. They had nothing to do with Japan other than having had ancestors who had come from Japan or having relatives in Japan. And he put them in internment camps. And that was horrible. And we look back on that and we say that was wrong. The Supreme Court has since ruled it was unconstitutional. At the time, the Supreme Court supported it. Our legislature supported it. So we look back on that and say, oh, that was a terrible thing. But the children were never separated from their families. I mean, and I'm not justifying FDR's internment camps. The point that I'm making is that we, in retrospect, at the time there were people speaking out, but we were in World War II, and dissent was not broadly accepted. But after the war, we looked back on that and we said, that was terrible, what we did. We locked those people up because of their race. And now Donald Trump is breaking up families, is locking these children up in solitary confinement in some cases, in general populations in other cases. Kids could be insanely cruel. Again, remember your childhood? Can you imagine the Lord of the Flies kind of world that some of these children are living in? Where the older kids are threatening the younger kids, or beating them up, or molesting them, or God knows what. I mean, kids can just be brutal. And so can adults, and so can guards, and they're not being supervised by social workers or child care workers. They're in prisons. Children. This is what we have sunk to. And you say, oh, he's talking about, gang members and MS-13. No, that's not what we're talking about at all here. Trump dresses it up with that. But, that's not what's going on. And that's not who's coming to this country, by the way. MS-13 started in Los Angeles.